Hey guys, it's Brian back with BG Model Workshop, and this is the tutorial on doing the wooden deck for the AMT Lowboy trailer. That's part of the theme build that we're doing for this year, the Universal Construction Vehicle theme build. So I'll show you how I go about doing it, and you guys feel free to modify this process, or if you have any comments or questions, let me know. But let's get started. So first thing we're going to start off with is some duct tape, and we're just going to using that. We're double looping itself so we can stick it to a piece of scrap wood. And then the craft sticks that we have, I've already glued them up in this pattern here so that we can move it around and flip it around, stuff like that, without having to deal with individual sticks. But what we would want to do is just go ahead and just stick that whole thing down as well as we can so it doesn't flop around too much. And then the craft sticks that we're using, they're measuring up to be about 1.4 centimeters by 10 millimeters and 3/8 of an inch by 4.5 inches long. So they're pretty standard. They're a little bit on the narrow side, but they're perfect for this application because whoever designed this particular model kit did us a favor. These things fit perfectly side to side. We didn't have to narrow any of them. We didn't have to cut them other than to length. And that was pretty straightforward. And what I used for that was a good old trusty razor saw and a cheapo miter box. I have mine attached to a larger piece of wood so that I can manipulate it better. And I have anti-skid stuff on the bottom. And that works out a lot better. And I can hold on to it and what have you. So that's always a handy tool to have around. What else I'm going to be using is some sandpaper. I got a 220 grit. That's going to be our final sandpaper. And then we have the rougher, oops, upside down, the rougher 100 grit. And this is what I usually use to weather the tires on stuff. So it's got a little bit of a wear to it already. We see some black boogers on there from some tires earlier on. And then I'll be using the golden oak from the Minwax wood finish pens, and then also our favorite guys from Tamiya, our brown and black panel liner accent. And then the cut to grass, or the coup de grace, is our, well, I don't really have a Dremel. This one's a Craftsman model, but I got the tapered stone in there, and it's a well-used guy. It's lived its life. It's telling a pretty good story. But that's going to be our secret weapon in this process. So what we're going to first start off with doing is using the 100 grit sandpaper to sand off the waxy coating that's on these guys. I'm assuming it's the waxy coating that's on there because water does beat up on them a little bit. So we're going to take away that coating on just the top surface, and then we'll be back in a second. Okay, so we hit it with the 100 grit sandpaper, and now it has a little bit of a furry feel to it, which is exactly what we want. So you can actually hear the texture while we're rubbing across there. And then get trusty little broom guy here, and now we're going to hit that with a little bit of the 220 grit. So hang on just a second. Okay, so the whole sanding technique is only just going to take just a few moments. I mean, quite literally, we're just buffing this stuff. That's basically all we're doing right there. Feels pretty good. Let's wipe that off. There we go. Yep, that's really nice. So now it feels like a wood texture again, not something that's got like some sort of coating on it. So now we're going to move on to the actual stain marker and apply as you will. So because this is a marker based product, you do have to shake it up a little bit and then dab it a little to get the flow going. And this guy is pretty well used up. But I thought this gave us the best looking pine color without being too dark. And my technique for doing this is don't even try to stay in the lines because we're doing it all the same. And it can be a little tedious. So we'll just go ahead and see the magic of pause, skip ahead here. Alright, so we've got all of our little planks done up, and now I'm just going to kind of wipe off a little bit of the excess. This is the Norm Abrams part of the wood shop, the woodworking bit. So here's the hard part. We got to let this sit for a couple of hours and let it actually cure up. Because what's going to happen is we're going to hit this with the Dremel next, and because of the nature of the actual stain, it will cause everything to get gummy. So we're going to have to let that cure up for a few hours and then come back and hit it with the Dremel. So again, we're going to do the magic of pause, and we'll come back and do that a little bit later on. Okay, so we had our little boards out in the sun here in Arizona for about an hour and a half, and they are no longer tacky or oily or gummy feeling, so we are ready to move on to the next step, which is our handy dandy motor tool. So what we're going to intend to do, let's see if I can flip this around in my hand, there we go, like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go along all the edges of the planks and kind of bevel those a little bit, give them a little bit of a chew up. And then we'll probably lay in there a little bit to bring out a little bit more of a wear pattern from the edges on both sides. And then we'll try tracing in between the boards a little bit to give a little bit of wear on the edges as well. And then kind of dip in here and there to give it some gouging and stuff like that, a little bit more visual interest, as we like to say. So let's go ahead and get that taken care of. And I'm going to do that off camera because it's going to be loud. Alright, so we're going to do that and come back in just a sec. Okay, so we just did a really fast pass. It only took us about 2 minutes. And we got some beveling on there. Nice and chewed up. And on the other end here, this board was standing a little bit proud. That's fine. We just hit that one a little bit more than we hit the other guys. You want to tell yourself a story while you're doing this type of stuff, of thinking about the cargo that might have been loaded on the trailer at some time, and the kind of life it leads day to day. So that's kind of what I do. Tell myself a little story in my head about what's been put on the back of this thing and what's been, you know, the day-to-day job work that it does. Job work. Boy, I am not good on the fly sometimes. But yeah, so now we're going to go in between the boards, and we'll see if we can't do that on camera. Hang on. So, even though I had a little mistake right there, I still went with it. It was a happy little accident. We just did a Bob Ross moment there. So that's basically it. So we're going to go ahead and finish up this planking, do the rest of that. And then next goes the water. We're going to brush on some water and then again set it out in the sun for a little while. So just a sec. Okay, so we went a little farther with the grinding stone on the motor tool and did some scratches and stuff where we figured maybe something was dragged across the deck, pallets and whatever one being loaded on. A couple more gouges, and I got a little more aggressive in some areas in between the boards to help out. So next up, we're just going to give that a little bit of a clean. So then the next step is to just Get our brush a little wet. And then be real liberal with the water, because we want that to get on there and get down inside there and do its job. And what that's going to do is going to cause all that grain to pucker up and give us some more visual interest. So another tedious part of the process is to let that set for a while. So we're going to probably give this another couple hours to just set up. I'm not going to set this in the sun because it'll just make all the water evaporate and won't let it won't give it time to do its job. So yeah, give us another few moments and we'll be back through the magic of pause. Okay, so we are back and we've let this actually set overnight, and our wooden planks have puffed up kind of. Got a little fluffy from all the water that we added. I did come out and do a second application of water. I got it really wet so that it beat it up and puddled on top of here, and I like that a lot better now. I'm going to hit this with a little bit more of the 220 sandpaper to take down some of the fuzzies, and then we'll go from there. So just a sec. Okay, so that's a little bit better. I like the feel of that. It's much nicer, and we can see some of the grain coming up. So now we got two options. We can apply a second coat of stain, or we can move on with the panel liner. So let's do halvesies. Hang on a sec. Okay, so we got the stain on these ones up here, and it's kind of bringing back the uniformity of the color, except on the areas where we gouged it out. Those are picking up and holding the stain really well. But let's try the panel liner on these guys down here and see how that goes. So with the panel liners, that's some nasty stuff. It's some heavy vapor coming off this stuff. So doing it out in the garage is probably the best idea for this type of thing, because we're going to have both of them open at the same time because we need to be quick about it. I'm just going to set these over here so I can get to them easier. So we're going to start off with the brown, and we're going to find a spot to add some, like right through here, like that, down into the cracks, slobber it around a little bit, and then we'll get a little bit of the back, and then we're just going to touch like that, and then back with the brown, and then again we'll just touch across the black, and that's going to help it seep in there and give it some nice staining, other than the stain that we use, of course. So we're just going to dab it around a little bit, and because we've sanded the top of the wood a little bit, the stain's a little more opened up so that it will suck some of this down in better. But yeah, the brown panel liner is the way to go with this stuff, especially with the color stain that we used on this, the golden oak. Just a touch of black in that. There we go. On a nice dry day like today here in Arizona, this stuff is just sucking right into that wood. The little bits of wood are very thirsty. So there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the rest of this, and then we'll come back. And something else I wanted to point out is, oops, I bumped the camera, up here where it's stained and it's still kind of fresh, we can take the black panel liner. And here's a little gouge right here, so we'll swab it in and then quickly go about buffing out the rest. And then we can get some nice little stains like that too. So because of the stain that's on the wood right now, it doesn't allow the panel liner to fully absorb in there, so it'll stay on the surface for just a couple seconds longer. There you go. So you can get some darkening streaks and stuff like that. So I left this one down here blonde on purpose because we didn't want to do any extra weathering on that, just to see how that's going to compare to everybody else. So we got several options on ways we can go. What we're going to do now is we're going to give it another light sanding with the 220 grit, and we'll take a look how that looks. Okay, so here's our final look. We did this with another quick pass of the 220 sandpaper to lighten up some of the raised areas that we got the wood to do with the water, and then took down a little bit of the panel liner that was built up on there, also kind of weathered that down a little bit. Down here I didn't do that so much, I just left it kind of full strength as I like to say. But and then this would be a plank that hasn't had anything but just the stain, a little bit of gouging with the motor tool, and then some water, and that's it. So that doesn't look bad to the naked eye. On camera it doesn't look that awesome. It's kind of bleached out a little bit, but I think this is where we wanted to go, and that's kind of what I did with the actual trailer. And this has been sitting and curing for, I want to say, 3 days now, and I'm really liking how it's looking. The planks are starting to curl a little bit here and there, which is perfect. And we're just going to tack everything down with some super glue because they're still not put in place yet. But we're going to tack everything down with some super glue after we get done weathering the trailer itself. So there you have it, folks. Hope this was helpful. I hope it wasn't too long and boring, but I've never done a tutorial before, so hopefully it was informative. Alright guys, take it easy and we'll talk to you later. Bye now.